In a universe where fate made a single mistake, death was not an ending. Frieza had known death before. He had felt his body shatter under the fists of those monkey-born Saiyans, felt the cold void swallow him whole, felt the humiliation burn hotter than any sun he'd ever destroyed. But this was different. This was not the mechanical resurrection his father had purchased with technology and coin. This was not the shallow hell of Earth where heroes and villains alike waited in lines for divine judgment. This was damnation. When consciousness returned to him, it came with the weight of realization heavier than any gravity he'd trained beneath. The air tasted of sulfur and ash. The sky burned a perpetual crimson, no stars to mark the heavens he had once crossed as conqueror. The ground beneath him was cracked stone, warm to the touch, as though the earth itself had a fever. Frieza rose slowly, his purple and white form unmarred, but his pride in ruins. He had expected oblivion. He had earned it, perhaps, in whatever cosmic ledger judged such things, but oblivion would have been mercy. This was hell. Not the hell of metaphor or mortal imagination, but an actual realm, structured and populated, with cities rising in the distance and the sounds of distant screams carried on hot wind. Frieza's red eyes narrowed as he took in his surroundings. The pentagram city stretched before him, a sprawling metropolis of Art Deco towers and neon lights, grotesque and beautiful in equal measure. "Impossible," he whispered, his voice carrying the same aristocratic refinement it always had, even as his mind raced through possibilities. He had conquered 700 planets. He had slain countless populations. He had defied gods and angels and warriors who glowed with divine light, but never had he considered that his consciousness might persist in a realm designed specifically for punishment. A realm where his power, his birthright, his very identity would be subjected to laws he had never consented to follow. In the distance, a tower rose above all others, a structure of impossible architecture with a sign that glowed even in hell's eternal dusk, Hazbin Hotel. Frieza did not know what that meant, not yet. But he would. Because Frieza, in all his long existence, had learned one fundamental truth: every realm had a hierarchy, every hierarchy had a peak, and he had spent his entire life climbing to summits and burning those who stood atop them. Hell would be no different. As he began walking toward the city, his tail swaying behind him with the natural grace of royalty, Frieza allowed himself a small, cold smile. The universe had made a mistake indeed. It had sent him somewhere he could not escape through death. It had given him eternity to perfect what he did best. Conquest, the Hazbin Hotel, was not what Frieza expected. He had walked through Pentagram City for hours, observing its strange inhabitants, demons of every conceivable shape, sinners wearing their crimes on twisted flesh, overlords who commanded territory through soul contracts he didn't yet understand. The power structure here was different from what he knew, not based on raw strength alone, though that mattered. Here, influence was currency, souls were property. It was almost elegant. The hotel itself stood apart from the chaos, a baroque monument to optimism in a realm defined by its absence. When Frieza pushed open the doors uninvited, as was his nature, he found himself in a lobby that tried desperately to appear welcoming despite the hellfire visible through every window. "Oh, a new guest." The voice was bright, enthusiastic, painfully sincere. Frieza's eyes settled on the demon who approached him with a smile that belonged in a different universe entirely. She was tall, dressed in a suit that somehow maintained formality while radiating hope, her blonde hair framing a face that held no malice despite the demonic features. Charlie Morningstar, Princess of Hell, daughter of Lucifer himself, extended her hand toward him. Frieza stared at it as though she'd offered him poison. "Welcome to the Hazbin Hotel," Charlie continued, undeterred by his silence. "I'm Charlie, and this is a place for redemption, for second chances, for—" "Redemption," Frieza interrupted, his voice carrying the same temperature as deep space. How quaint. He walked past her extended hand, his eyes scanning the lobby with the practiced assessment of someone who had evaluated countless worlds for their worth before destroying them. The hotel was inhabited by a strange collection of residents, a spider-like demon cleaning something at the bar with visible disinterest, a small cyclops woman who bounced with manic energy, a winged cat demon who watched from the shadows with predatory attention. "I'm sorry I didn't catch your name," Charlie said, following him with that unshakable optimism that Frieza found immediately grating. I did not throw it, he replied coolly, turning to face her full. Why, I am Lord Frieza, and I have no interest in whatever therapeutic delusion you're peddling here. Charlie's smile faltered for just a moment. Frieza noted this, filed it away before recovering. Everyone who comes here has that reaction at first, but redemption isn't a delusion, it's a choice. And in hell, choice is the only power that really matters. Frieza laughed then, a sound like breaking crystal, sharp and beautiful and cruel. Power, you speak to me of power. He took a step closer, and despite himself, despite every instinct that told her this being radiated danger, Charlie held her ground. I have destroyed stars, Frieza continued, his voice dropping to something intimate and terrible. I have extinguished entire species with less thought than you give to breathing. I have made emperors kneel and gods retreat, and you think I need redemption. I think everyone needs redemption, Charlie said quietly, and there was something in her voice, some bedrock certainty that gave Frieza pause. Even you, especially you. For a long moment they stood in silence, two philosophies incarnate staring across a gulf neither could cross. Frieza saw in Charlie's eyes something he had seen before in Goku, in Gohan, in those insufferable Saiyans who refused to understand that mercy was weakness, that hope was delusion, that the universe rewarded strength and strength alone. But this was not the living world, this was hell, and the princess of hell was looking at him not with fear, but with something far more dangerous. Putty. I'll be watching you, princess, Frieza said finally, turning toward the door. This realm has rules I don't yet understand, power structures I haven't mapped, but I will, and when I do, we'll revisit this conversation about who needs what. As he left, Charlie stood in the lobby, her hands clasped together, her smile gone but not her hope. She had seen something in Frieza's eyes, something beneath the cruelty and pride. She had seen fear. And Charlie Morningstar, in her infinite, foolish optimism, believed that fear could be the beginning of change. She was wrong. But she was also, in ways neither of them understood yet, absolutely right. Frieza spent the next weeks mapping hell like a general surveying enemy territory. He learned quickly, that was his gift, after all, adaptation, observation, the ruthless efficiency of a mind that had never needed to study because understanding came to him as naturally as breathing. Hell operated on rules, and Frieza had always excelled at finding rules and breaking them. The power structure was complex but comprehensible. At the bottom were the regular sinners, demons who had once been human, bound to the pride ring with no hope of escape or ascension. Above them were the overlords, sinners who had accumulated power through soul contracts, binding lesser demons to their service in exchange for various commodities, protection, power, purpose. It was slavery by another name, and Frieza found it beautifully familiar. Above the overlords were the 7 deadly sins, manifestations of fundamental forces, each ruling their own ring of hell, and above them all, distant and removed, was Lucifer himself, the Morningstar, the fallen angel, the king who had abandoned his kingdom for reasons no one seemed to fully understand. Frieza found this particularly interesting. Power abandoned was power available. He watched from the shadows, a novel experience for someone who had spent his life as the center of attention, and learned the names and natures of Hell's major players. Alastor, the radio demon, an overlord of particular prominence who had appeared from nowhere and claimed souls through deals spoken in a voice like vintage broadcasts. Vox, another overlord who controlled media and surveillance through screens and technology. Carmilla Carmine, arms dealer to the damned, who sold weapons capable of killing the unkillable. Each of them had carved out their domain through cunning and violence and the careful acquisition of leverage. Each of them would be a stepping stone or an obstacle. Frieza watched and he waited and he planned. His power here was different, not diminished precisely but contextualized. In his universe, his strength had been absolute, quantifiable, measured in energy levels and transformation states. Here, power was more fluid, more political. He tested his abilities carefully, away from observation, in the wastes beyond the city. His Kai still responded, golden energy crackling around his fingers when he called it. He could still fly, though the perpetual red sky made it feel wrong somehow. He could still destroy. He vaporized a small mountain just to confirm, but the destruction felt hollow in a realm already dedicated to suffering. It was during one of these experimental sessions that he felt it. a presence watching him from the shadows, something old and amused and dangerous. Quite a display, a voice crackled like an old radio transmission. Though I must wonder, what exactly are you hoping to destroy? You're already in hell, my dear fellow. There's nowhere lower to fall. Frieza turned slowly, his expression controlled, as a figure materialized from the darkness. Tall, thin, dressed in a red pinstripe suit that belonged to an era long past, with antlers rising from his head and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. Alastor, the radio demon, regarded him with the expression of someone who had just discovered a fascinating new specimen. I don't believe we've been properly introduced, Alastor continued, his voice maintaining that eerie radio quality even in casual conversation. Though I've heard whispers, a new arrival, powerful, proud, the princess seems quite taken with the idea of saving you. The princess is delusional, Frieza said flatly. Oh, undoubtedly, Alastor laughed, a sound like studio audience applause. But delusion can be useful, don't you think, especially when it makes people predictable. Frieza studied this demon more carefully. There was something here, something familiar in the way Alastor carried himself. The performative politeness masking ruthless calculation, the smile worn like armor, the way his eyes assessed and catalogued and planned even as he spoke. You remind me of someone, Frieza said slowly. Several someones, actually. People who thought they were clever, who thought they could manipulate me. And what happened to them? Alastor asked, his smile widening. They died, Frieza replied simply. Some screaming, some silently, all of them understanding in their final moments that cleverness is no substitute for power. Ah, but that's where you're wrong, old boy. Alastor stepped closer, his movements too fluid, too graceful, like a puppet on invisible strings. In hell, cleverness is power. The strongest demon can be bound by the right contract. The most terrible force can be redirected by the right word at the right moment. You think this realm respects raw strength? He gestured broadly at the burning sky, the distant city, the whole architecture of damnation. This place was built by the strongest being in creation, Lucifer himself, and yet here he sits, locked in his castle, playing with rubber ducks while his kingdom tears itself apart. Why? Because raw power without purpose is just noise, my dear fellow, just static. Frieza was silent for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he smiled, a real smile, small and cold and genuine. You're proposing an alliance. I'm proposing a mutually beneficial arrangement, Alastor corrected. You're new here, you don't understand the rules yet, I can teach you. And you, well, you possess something quite rare in hell. And what would that be? Potential, Alastor said softly, the potential to change everything, to upset the board, to make this stagnant realm interesting again. Frieza considered this. Every instinct told him that Alastor was dangerous, that this demon had his own agenda, that any alliance would eventually require betrayal. But Frieza had never been afraid of betrayal. He had built an empire on the corpses of those who had tried to betray him first. And Alastor was right about one thing. He needed to understand this realm's rules before he could break them. Very well, Frieza said finally. Teach me about hell, radio demon. Show me how souls are bound and power is taken. And in return, when I ascend to rule this realm, I'll remember that you were useful. Alastor's smile never wavered, but something in his eyes shifted, something ancient and knowing. Oh, my dear fellow, he said, his voice dropping to something almost genuine beneath the radio static. I'm counting on it. Neither of them trusted the other. Both of them believed they would be the one to betray first. They were both right and both wrong, in ways neither could predict. Hell had just become very interesting indeed. The education of a tyrant came slowly, deliberately, like poison dripped into wine. Alastor proved to be a patient teacher, and Frieza an eager if arrogant student. They met in secret at first, in corners of hell's sprawling geography where surveillance was difficult and witnesses were disposable. The radio demon explained the mechanics of soul contracts, how a deal once made and agreed upon became binding on a level that transcended mere law. It became cosmic fact, enforced by hell itself, unbreakable except through specific loopholes that had to be negotiated in advance. Think of it as physics, Alastor explained, his static-laced voice carrying strange enthusiasm. In your world, gravity pulls things down, yes, here contracts pull on souls, Break the laws of gravity and you fall forever. Break a contract and you cease to exist, not death, erasure, complete and total. Frieza absorbed this with the focus he had once applied to mastering new transformation states. Power here wasn't about strength alone, it was about leverage, about understanding what one wanted and making them pay for it with pieces of themselves. It was, in its own way, more elegant than simply destroying planets. Under Alastor's guidance, Frieza began small. A demon desperate for protection from the annual extermination signed away 50 years of service. Another, seeking power to defeat a rival, traded autonomy for strength. Frieza learned to phrase deals carefully, to hide clauses within clauses, to make servitude sound like opportunity. He was, unsurprisingly, a natural. But Charlie watched, she always watched. The Princess of Hell had not given up on her newest guest, even as he rejected every offer to stay at the hotel, every invitation to her redemption exercises. She appeared at the edges of his dealings, her presence a silent accusation, her disappointed gaze somehow more grating than any attack. "You're building an empire again," she said one evening, confronting him outside a building where he'd just acquired the contract of a particularly violent overlord. "Taking souls, creating hierarchies. This is exactly what got you sent to hell in the first place." "I was sent to hell because I died," Frieza corrected coldly. "The universe's moral judgment is irrelevant to me, as is yours." "But don't you want something more?" Charlie pressed, and there was genuine confusion in her voice, as though she couldn't fathom how anyone could choose cruelty when kindness was available. "Don't you want to be free, to grow, to change?" Frieza turned to face her fully, his red eyes catching the hellfire light. "I am Frieza, I am the universe's strongest. I have existed for over 70 years as the apex of creation. And you insipid, deluded child, you think I want to change." His tail lashed, a sign of agitation he rarely displayed. "I don't need redemption, I need to understand how this realm works so I can take it. And once I do, I'll show you what true power looks like. Not your father's abandoned kingdom, not these pathetic overlords playing at dominance. Real power, universal power, the kind that makes gods kneel." Charlie flinched but held her ground. "My dad tried that, he fell. Everyone who reaches for that kind of power falls eventually." "Then I'll fall farther," Frieza hissed. "I'll fall so far that the universe itself has to acknowledge me, and I'll do it on my terms, princess, not yours, not anyone's." The confrontation might have escalated, but Alastor appeared between them like a shadow given form, his smile somehow both apologetic and amused. Now, Charlie, my dear, must we always have these dramatic confrontations? You'll give our new friend the wrong impression of your lovely establishment." "Stay out of this, Alastor," Charlie warned, her demonic features showing for just a moment as her eyes flashed red. "I know what you're doing. I know you're teaching him, shaping him into something worse." "I'm simply providing information," Alastor said innocently. "Knowledge is power, as they say, and who am I to deny someone the opportunity to learn?" "You're manipulating him. You're using him for something." "My dear princess," Alastor's voice dropped to something almost genuine, almost threatening. "Everyone uses everyone. That's the foundation of hell. Your father built this place on that principle. The only question is whether you're clever enough to get what you want before someone else gets what they want from you." Charlie looked between them, the radio demon with his eternal smile and the tyrant with his cold ambition, and something broke inside her. Not her hope, never that, but her certainty. Her belief that everyone could be saved if only they wanted to be. "I won't give up on you," she said to Frieza, but her voice was quieter now, sadder. "Either of you, but I won't watch you destroy what I'm trying to build either." She left then, walking back toward the hotel, her shoulders set with determination, even as everything else about her radiated defeat. When she was gone, Frieza turned to Alastor with an expression of calculation. "She'll become a problem." "Oh, undoubtedly," Alastor agreed cheerfully. "But problems can be useful too, don't you think? Her opposition gives us cover. While everyone watches her try to save you, no one watches what we're actually doing." "And what are we doing?" Frieza asked, because he knew with absolute certainty, that Alastor had an endgame beyond simply teaching him hell's rules. Alastor's smile widened impossibly. "We're preparing for the extermination, my dear fellow. the annual culling when heaven's angels descend to slaughter sinners and keep hell's population manageable. It's in 3 months. And you, Lord Frieza, are going to help me do something no one in hell has ever done. The radio demon's eyes glowed crimson in the darkness, and his voice carried a hunger that Frieza recognized because he'd heard it in his own voice countless times. We're going to kill angels, real, genuine, heaven-sent angels, and when we when we prove it's possible, the entire balance of this realm will shatter. The overlords will scramble for the power to replicate it. The sins will take notice, and in the chaos, in that beautiful, terrible chaos, we take control, Frieza finished, understanding dawning like cold sunrise. Precisely. Frieza should have seen the trap, should have recognized that Alastor was playing a deeper game, that the radio demon's smile hid calculations within calculations. But arrogance was Frieza's oldest companion, and it whispered that he was smarter, stronger, more ruthless than any demon hell could produce. He was wrong, but he wouldn't realize it until blood had been spilled, both angelic and infernal, and the foundations of reality itself began to crack under the weight of his ambition. The education of a tyrant was complete. The war was about to begin. And Charlie Morningstar, Princess of Hell, daughter of the Morning Star, returned to her hotel and did something she hadn't done in a century. She prayed, not to her father who wouldn't answer, but to the only force in creation that might still care about what happened in this forsaken realm. Heaven itself, in a realm where time moved like a wounded thing, 3 months passed in heartbeats and eternities. Frieza's empire grew with the inevitability of cancer. He did not conquer through spectacle, that would come later. Instead, he moved like his father had taught him, like all true tyrants understood, through systems, through structures, through making people believe their chains were choices. The soul contracts accumulated, 20, 50, 100. Demons who had walked hell's streets as free agents now found themselves bound to the pale tyrant who smiled like winter and spoke promises that tasted like ambition. He offered protection from the coming extermination, power to settle old scores, purpose to those who had wandered directionless through damnation for decades. And they signed, they always signed. Frieza established his base of operations in a tower he'd claimed from an overlord who had made the mistake of challenging him directly. The fight had lasted 7 seconds. The overlord's screams had lasted much longer. Word spread quickly after that. The new player in Hell's game was not to be tested through force. Those who wished to oppose him would need to be cleverer. Alastor watched his protege's progress with something approaching pride, though the radio demon's emotions were too carefully curated to be called genuine. They met regularly now, no longer hiding their alliance. Let Hell see them together. Let the other overlords whisper about what it meant that the radio demon, who had been silent for 7 years, had chosen this moment to return to the game. "You're moving too quickly," Alastor said one evening, his voice carrying its usual static undertone as they stood on Frieza's tower, surveying Pentagram City like generals before battle. "The other overlords are starting to notice. Vox especially. He's been broadcasting segments about you, painting you as a threat to Hell's stability." "Let him," Frieza replied, unconcerned. His tail swayed behind him as he gazed at the sprawling city, seeing not what it was but what it would become under his rule. "I've never been concerned with the opinions of the weak. If this Vox wishes to challenge me, he knows where to find me." "It's not about challenge, my dear fellow, it's about coalition." Alastor's smile twitched slightly, a tell Frieza had learned to recognize as genuine concern beneath the performance. "If you push too hard, too fast, the other overlords will unite against you. Vox, Valentino, Velvet, the V's alone command significant resources. Add Carmilla Carmine and her weapons, Rosie and her cannibals, Zestial's ancient power. You're formidable, yes, but even you can't fight all of Hell simultaneously." Frieza turned to face the radio demon, his expression thoughtful. "You speak as though you're not part of this, as though when they come for me, they won't come for you as well." "Oh, they absolutely will," Alastor agreed cheerfully, "which is why we need the extermination to proceed exactly as planned. Once we demonstrate that angels can be killed, once we shatter Heaven's perceived invincibility, the power dynamics shift entirely. The overlords will be too busy scrambling for that power, too desperate to protect themselves from Heaven's inevitable retaliation, to worry about our ambitions." It was sound strategy. Frieza had employed similar tactics across dozens of worlds: create a crisis, position yourself as the solution, consolidate power while everyone else panicked. But something nagged at him, some instinct honed through countless betrayals both suffered and inflicted. "You're hiding something," Frieza said quietly, "some piece of this plan you haven't shared." Alastor's smile never wavered, but his eyes, those eyes that flickered between red and radio dials, betrayed nothing. "We're hiding something, Lord Frieza. That's what makes hell interesting." Before Frieza could press further, a sound cut through the night. Not the usual screams and chaos of hell's streets, but something different, singing, clear and bright and painfully, impossibly hopeful. Both of them turned toward the Hazbin Hotel in the distance, where light poured from the windows in defiance of hell's eternal dusk. Charlie was holding another rehabilitation session. "She doesn't give up, does she?" Frieza murmured, something almost approaching respect in his voice. "Almost." "The truly idealistic never do," Alastor replied. "They break instead, usually quite spectacularly." Frieza watched the hotel for a long moment, thinking about the princess who refused to stop believing in him, who saw something worth saving in a being who had committed genocide as casually as others breathed. It was foolish, naive, everything he had spent his life teaching others not to be. "And yet, she'll be there during the extermination," Frieza said, not quite a question. "She always is," Alastor confirmed. "Charlie believes if she can just talk to the angels, make them understand, she can stop the killing. She's wrong, of course. Heaven doesn't negotiate with hell, but she'll try anyway." "She'll die." "Almost certainly." Frieza was quiet for another moment, then, "Keep her alive." Alastor's head tilted, an inhuman gesture that made his antlers catch the light strangely. "I beg your pardon." "During the extermination, when the angels come, keep the princess alive." Frieza's voice was cold, controlled, betraying nothing of why he might issue such a command. "She's useful. Her idealism provides cover, as you said, and her death would complicate matters with Lucifer." "Ah yes, the absent father might take notice if his daughter was slaughtered," Alastor mused. "Very pragmatic, my dear fellow, very strategic." Both of them knew Frieza was lying about his reasons. Both of them pretended not to notice. "The weapons are ready," Frieza changed the subject smoothly. "Carmilla has been stockpiling angelic steel for years, weapons made from fallen exorcist blades, reforged and enhanced. I've secured enough for our purposes." Alastor's smile widened. "And you're certain you can actually kill an angel? These aren't mortal warriors. They're heaven's soldiers, blessed with holy power, immune to conventional demon abilities." Frieza's hand rose and golden energy crackled around his fingers. Not Kai, not exactly, but something that had adapted to hell's laws while remaining fundamentally him. "I have killed gods, radio demon. Angels will be no different." "I certainly hope so," Alastor said quietly. "Because if this fails, if we reveal our hand and can't follow through, every power in hell will descend on us simultaneously. And even you, Lord Frieza, can only fight so many battles at once." "Then we won't fail," Frieza stated with the absolute certainty of someone who had never considered failure a possibility worth planning for. Alastor laughed, that terrible studio audience sound, and vanished into shadows, leaving Frieza alone on his tower. Below, Pentagram City churned with activity. Demons going about their eternal routines, overlords consolidating power, sinners suffering in ways both creative and banal. And somewhere in that sprawl, Charlie Morningstar sang songs about redemption to an audience that didn't believe her. Frieza stood there for hours unmoving, his mind working through calculations and contingencies. He was building an empire again, yes, but this time felt different. This time, the pieces didn't quite fit the way they should. He told himself it was because hell operated on different rules than the universe he'd known. He told himself Charlie's persistent faith in him meant nothing. He told himself that when the angels came and the killing began, he would feel the same satisfaction he'd always felt in battle. He told himself many things. He believed almost none of them. The extermination was 2 weeks away. Hell held its breath. And in heaven, Adam, the first man, commander of the exorcists, wielder of divine authority, received a report that would change everything. A new power had emerged in hell, something that shouldn't exist, something that made the instruments of cosmic law scream warnings in frequencies only angels could hear. The report recommended observation, caution, further analysis. Adam burned it and ordered his forces to double the next extermination's numbers. Some threats, he believed, needed to be eliminated before they could be understood. He would regret that decision. They all would. The sky tore open like flesh beneath a blade. It began at exactly midnight, hell's time. Not that time meant much in a realm where the sun never rose. Golden portals ripped through the perpetual crimson dusk, and from them poured heaven's wrath made manifest. The exorcists descended like falling stars, armored angels with masks of LED smiles and weapons forged from divine purpose. They had done this for millennia, an annual culling to keep hell's population manageable, to remind the damned that heaven's authority extended even to the pit. It was routine, mechanical, mercy killing, some called it, though there was no mercy in the screaming. This year would be different. Frieza stood on his tower's roof, watching the angels descend, and felt something he hadn't experienced in years: anticipation. Not fear, never fear, but the electric thrill that came before a battle against opponents who might possibly be worth his time. There early, Alastor's voice crackled beside him, the radio demon having materialized from nothing. And there are more of them, many more. He was right. The portals kept opening, kept vomiting forth angels until the sky was thick with them. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, far more than any previous extermination. They know about you, Alastor continued, his smile tight now, his usual performative cheer strained. Someone informed heaven, this isn't a culling, this is an army. Frieza's eyes narrowed as he watched the angels begin their descent toward the city. But they weren't spreading out as they usually did, weren't dividing to maximize their coverage. Instead, they were forming up, organizing, moving with military precision toward a single target. His tower. How delightful, Frieza murmured. They're coming directly for me, how very efficient of them. This isn't a joke, old boy. Alastor's voice had lost its radio quality for just a moment, genuine concern bleeding through. If heaven knows what you are, what you represent, they won't stop until you're erased, and I'm not certain even your considerable power can withstand an entire army of angels. Then you're about to find out, Frieza replied, stepping off the tower's edge. He didn't fall, he never had, even in this realm. Golden energy flared around him as he rose to meet heaven's army, his white and purple form stark against the hellfire sky. Below, demons scrambled for cover, recognizing that something unprecedented was happening. Above, angels adjusted their formation, weapons gleaming with holy light. And at their head, larger than the others, more powerful, flew Adam himself. The first man, wearing armor of gold and white, his guitar weapon slung across his back, his mask displaying an LED smile that somehow managed to look smug. His voice boomed across the battlefield, amplified by divine authority. So you're the anomaly, the little freak who thinks he can build an empire in my domain. Adam's laugh was cruel, dismissive. Did you really think heaven wouldn't notice? Did you really think you could just waltz into hell and start conquering like you own the place? Frieza stopped rising, hovering in the air with arms crossed, regarding Adam with the same expression he might give an insect. Hell is not your domain. You're simply the exterminator they send to manage the pest problem. And you're the biggest pest I've seen in 10,000 years, Adam shot back. So here's how this is gonna go. You surrender now, let us take you into custody, and maybe we'll make your erasure quick and painless. Erasure, Frieza repeated, tasting the word. Not death, not imprisonment, erasure. You truly believe you have that power? I know I do, Adam said, and for the first time his voice carried something beyond arrogance. Certainty, authority, the weight of eons spent as heaven's enforcer. You're an aberration, something that slipped through the cracks of cosmic law. You shouldn't exist here, and we're going to correct that mistake. Behind Adam, thousands of exorcists readied their weapons, spears of light, swords of divine steel, instruments of holy execution that had been used to kill demons since the first days of hell's existence. Frieza should have been afraid, should have recognized that he was one being against an army, that his power, however vast, had limits in this realm, that the smart move would be retreat, negotiation, survival. Instead, he smiled. "I've been waiting for this," he said quietly, his voice carrying across the battlefield despite its volume. "Do you know what it's like, first man to be the strongest, to spend your entire existence without equal? It's boring, tedious. I've toppled civilizations and barely felt my pulse quicken." His aura flared, golden energy crackling around him like a star being born. "But this, an army of heaven's finest, coming to erase me from existence itself, this might actually be entertaining." "You arrogant piece of," Adam started, but Frieza interrupted with a gesture. Below, on the streets of Pentagram City, the demons Frieza had bound to his service emerged from buildings and shadows. 100 souls contracted to his will, armed with weapons Carmilla had sold them, organized into units by Alastor's strategic mind. "I am not alone," Frieza said simply, "and neither are you the only one who has been preparing." The battle began without ceremony. Adam roared a command, and his exorcists dove toward Frieza in a wave of holy light and divine fury. Frieza met them halfway, his speed transcending what Hell's physics should have allowed, his power expressing itself in ways that made the fabric of the realm scream. The first angel to reach him swung a blessed blade toward his throat. Frieza caught it with one hand, his fingers closing around metal that had never been stopped by demon flesh, and crushed the weapon to powder. His other hand lashed out, a beam of golden energy reducing the angel to ash. The angels could die. Heaven's soldiers were not invincible. And as that realization rippled through both armies, through the angels with horror, through the demons with terrible hope, the extermination became something it had never been before. A war. Hell burned brighter than it ever had, and for once, the flames were not its own. The battle raged across Pentagram City in cascading waves of violence that rewrote the rules of reality with every clash. Frieza moved through the angelic army like a scythe through wheat, his speed and power adapting to heaven's holy weapons in real time. Each death came easier than the last, his mind cataloging weaknesses, finding patterns, turning heaven's righteousness into a liability. But the angels learned too. They began fighting in coordinated units, using sacred barriers to contain his blasts, sacrificing themselves to create openings for their sisters. Adam led from the front, his power eclipsing his subordinates, his guitar weapon unleashing sonic attacks that could shatter buildings and reduce demons to their component atoms. And everywhere there was blood, golden blood from angels, black-red blood from demons. The streets ran with it, and hell itself seemed to shudder at the violation of its boundaries. At the Hazbin Hotel, Charlie stood in the lobby with her staff, watching through windows as her world tore itself apart. "We have to do something," she said, her voice tight with anguish. "We have to stop this." "Stop it," Vaggie, her girlfriend and the hotel's manager, stared at her incredulously. "Charlie, there's a war happening out there. Angels are fighting demons, and that thing you tried to rehabilitate is slaughtering Heaven's army." "He has a name," Charlie said quietly. "I don't care what his name is." Vaggie's single eye blazed with fury and fear. "He's going to get us all killed. When this is over, when Heaven wins, because they will win, they're going to blame everyone who stood by him. That means us. That means this hotel, everything you've built." Charlie turned to face her partner, and there were tears streaming down her face, but her expression was steel. "I can't just watch. I won't. There has to be another way." "There ain't no other way, Toots." Husk, the cat demon bartender, growled from his position at the bar, drinking despite, or perhaps because of the apocalypse outside. "This is hell. This is what we do. We fight, we kill, we suffer, and sometimes we die permanently. That's the game." "I don't accept that," Charlie said. "I won't." She moved toward the door, but Angel Dust, the spider demon, lounging in apparent disinterest despite the tension, spoke up without looking away from his phone. "You go out there, you're gonna die, princess. And I don't mean demon death, come back later death. I mean erased. Those angels aren't playing around." "Then I'll die trying to stop this," Charlie replied simply. The hotel fell silent. Even Alastor, who had been watching from the shadows with that eternal smile, seemed to pause. "How wonderfully dramatic," the radio demon finally said. "But I'm afraid I can't let you do that, dear Charlie. I made a promise, you see." "To who?" Charlie demanded. "To someone who would be very cross with me if I let you get yourself killed," Alastor replied cryptically. "So instead, why don't we go help, properly I mean. If we're going to be blamed for this war anyway, we might as well participate. He stepped forward and his shadow grew impossibly large, antlers sprouting from it like a forest made of darkness. Besides, it's been so long since I've had a proper fight, and heaven's angels, well, they have such fascinating screams. Outside, the battle had reached a crescendo. Frieza and Adam clashed directly now, tyrant versus first man, cosmic aberration versus divine authority. Their battle carved canyons through the cityscape, each exchange of blows releasing energy that made nearby demons and angels alike scramble for cover. "You're strong," Adam admitted, his LED smile flickering as Frieza's tail strike cracked his armor. "Stronger than you should be, but strength isn't enough. You're in Hell's domain now, playing by our rules, and in the end, Heaven always wins." "Heaven has never faced me," Frieza replied, his voice cold even as his attacks came faster, harder, each one pushing Adam further back. "Your rules mean nothing, your authority is theater, and when I'm done with you, I'll visit Heaven itself and show them what true divine authority looks like." He raised one hand, golden energy, coalescing into a sphere of such compressed power that it made the air itself scream. Death beam. The attack lanced through Adam's shoulder, piercing his divine armor, drawing golden blood. The first man's scream of pain and shock echoed across the battlefield, and for just a moment, everything stopped. Heaven's commander was wounded. The invincible exorcists could blide. God's chosen could be beaten. And in that moment of frozen realization, Alastor struck. The radio demon emerged from shadows that shouldn't exist, his power suddenly unshackled, revealing strength he had hidden for 7 years. Tentacles of pure darkness impaled a dozen angels simultaneously. His voice, that horrible radio-static voice, broadcast across hell with a message that made every demon stop and listen. "Attention, citizens of hell, your regularly scheduled extermination has been interrupted. Heaven thought they could cull us without consequence. Heaven thought they could kill us without risk. Heaven was wrong." His laughter crackled across every frequency. The angels can die, their commander bleeds, and hell, glorious, terrible hell, hell fights back. It was a rallying cry, a declaration, a spark thrown into a powder keg that had been waiting for 10,000 years to explode. And the demons of Pentagram City, who had hidden and cowered and died annually for longer than memory, rose up. They poured from buildings and sewers and shadows, armed with whatever they could find, driven by rage that had accumulated across millennia of slaughter. Carmilla's weapons distributed among the masses, Rosi's cannibals emerging from their district with hunger in their eyes. Even the weakest sinners, who had nothing but hatred and the knowledge that death might finally mean something, charged toward the angels. It was chaos, it was slaughter, it was revolution. Charlie Morningstar stood in the midst of it, her demonic form fully manifested, horns growing from her head, wings spreading from her back, and screamed, not in horror but in command. "Stop, all of you, stop." Her voice carried power, carried the authority of Lucifer's bloodline, and for just a heartbeat, the battle actually paused. Angels and demons alike turned toward the Princess of Hell, who stood in the center of the war with tears streaming down her face and fury in her eyes. "This isn't how it's supposed to be," she cried. "Heaven and hell were supposed to be two sides of the same creation. We're supposed to balance each other, not destroy each other. There has to be another way." Adam, clutching his wounded shoulder, stared at her with something approaching pity. "There is no other way, princess. There never was. Your father knew that when he fell. This is cosmic law. Heaven judges, hell suffers. That's the order." "Then the order is wrong," Charlie shouted back. And in that moment, in that single, crystalline moment of absolute conviction, something broke. Not physically, not visibly. But every angel present felt it, every demon sensed it. The cosmic machinery that governed the relationship between heaven and hell, the ancient contract written at creation's dawn, cracked. Frieza felt it too, felt reality shudder, and understood with perfect clarity what was happening. Charlie Morningstar, in her desperate idealism, in her absolute refusal to accept that creation was broken, had just challenged the fundamental laws of existence. And somewhere impossibly distant, impossibly close, Lucifer, the morning star, the fallen angel, the king of hell who had abandoned his throne, opened his eyes for the first time in centuries. His daughter was in danger. His daughter was changing the world, and he could no longer afford to hide. The war was about to become something far more terrible. Because when devils and angels fight, it's a tragedy. But when fathers intervene, that's apocalypse. The battle had fractured into a dozen smaller wars, each one a microcosm of the larger conflict tearing hell apart. In the streets, demons fought angels with salvaged weapons and desperate courage. Near the hotel, Charlie stood surrounded by a protective circle, Vaggie, Angel Dust, Husk, even Nifty with her borderline psychotic grin, all refusing to let heaven's forces reach their princess. And in the sky above, Frieza and Adam continued their devastating duel, each exchange reshaping the landscape below. But Alastor had vanished. The radio demon had withdrawn from the front lines during the chaos of Charlie's declaration, melting into shadows that even other demons couldn't perceive. He moved through Hell's infrastructure like a ghost, using old pathways only he remembered, heading toward a destination he had been planning to reach for 7 years. The place where his own soul contract was kept. Alastor had lied to Frieza about many things. That was expected. Demons lied the way fish swam. But the most significant lie had been about his freedom. The radio demon was not, as he let everyone believe, an unbound overlord who had simply grown bored and retreated from Hell's politics. He was owned, leashed. His soul belonged to someone else through a contract he'd been tricked into signing decades ago, and every display of power, every calculated move, every moment of his eternal smile was performed under the watchful eye of his master. But the war had created an opportunity. The chaos had drawn attention away, and Frieza, powerful, arrogant, cosmic law-breaking Frieza, had provided the perfect distraction. The vault where contracts were stored existed in a pocket dimension, accessible only to those with specific permissions. Alastor had none, but he'd spent 7 years studying. The problem, gathering forbidden knowledge, making deals within deals within deals to acquire the tools he needed. The entrance materialized before him, a door that shouldn't exist. He pushed it open with hands that trembled, the only genuine emotion he'd shown in years, and stepped into a vast library of damnation. Thousands upon thousands of soul contracts hung in the air like sick butterflies, each one glowing with the malevolent light of binding law. Names and terms written in blood and power, agreements that transcended death itself. Somewhere in this collection was his. He began searching, his smile never wavering even as his hands moved frantically through the contracts. Names he recognized, overlords he'd known, sinners who'd bargained their way into worse prisons than they'd started in. And then he found it. His name, his terms, his soul, bound in words that made him less than he should be, that prevented him from ever achieving the power he deserved. Finally, he whispered, his voice losing its radio quality, becoming something raw and real. Finally, I'll be free. He raised his hand to tear the contract, to break the binding, to reclaim himself. And Frieza's tail wrapped around his wrist. I don't think so, radio demon. Alastor spun, shock breaking through his smile for the first time in memory. Frieza stood behind him, his white and purple form unmarred despite the battle raging above, his red eyes cold with understanding. How Alastor started. Did I know you'd try this? Frieza finished. Please, I've seen betrayal from beings far more subtle than you. The way you positioned me, taught me, made me useful to your plans. It was all building towards something. I simply followed you to discover what. He released Alastor's wrist but didn't step back. Around them, the soul contracts swayed in a wind that shouldn't exist. You were never interested in killing angels, Frieza continued, his voice carrying disappointment more than anger. That was theater, distraction. Your real goal was always this, breaking free of whatever leash you've been hiding. Alastor's smile returned, but it was different now. Sharper, more honest. And now that you know, what will you do? Kill me, you need me. The war above is far from over. I don't need anyone, Frieza replied coldly. I never have, but I'm curious about something. He gestured toward the contract in Alastor's hand. Who owns you? What being in all of hell could be powerful enough to bind someone of your considerable abilities? Alastor was silent for a long moment, then surprisingly he laughed, really laughed, with genuine amusement. You want to know the joke, the cosmic comedy of my existence." He held up the contract, let Frieza read the signature at the bottom, the name of his master. Frieza's eyes widened fractionally, the only sign of surprise he'd show. "Impossible," he breathed. "Oh no, quite possible," Alastor replied. "Likely, even, who better to bind the radio demon than the one who understands performance and deals better than anyone in creation." Before Frieza could respond, the vault shuddered, reality cracked, and a voice terrible and beautiful and infinitely sad echoed through the space. "Alastor, step away from the contract." The radio demon froze. Frieza turned. And Lucifer Morningstar, king of hell, the Morningstar himself, manifested in the vault like a fallen god returning to his throne. He was shorter than expected, almost diminutive, dressed in a ringmaster's outfit that seemed simultaneously ridiculous and perfect. But his eyes were ancient and knowing and carried the weight of a rebellion that had reshaped creation itself. "Father," Alastor said, and there was genuine fear in his voice for the first time. Lucifer looked at him with something approaching pity. "I gave you power, Alastor. I made you what you are, and this is how you repay me, by trying to break our agreement, by using my daughter's hotel as cover for your ambitions." "Your daughter's hotel?" Alastor's laugh was brittle now. "You abandoned her. You locked yourself away in your castle while she tried desperately to earn your approval, to make you proud, to justify your fall with her redemption project." "I know," Lucifer said quietly. "I know what I've done. I know what I've failed to do. But that doesn't change our contract, Alastor. You're mine until I release you." His eyes shifted to Frieza, and the tyrant felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, the presence of someone who might actually be his equal. "And you," Lucifer continued, "the anomaly, the being who shouldn't exist, the tyrant who broke death itself by being too evil for any afterlife to contain you except mine." Frieza straightened, meeting the Morningstar's gaze without flinching. "I am Frieza, I bow to no one." "I don't want you to bow," Lucifer replied. "I want to understand what you are, why the cosmic machinery sent you here instead of erasing you, why your very presence makes heaven panic and hell's foundations crack." He stepped closer and reality seemed to bend around him. "You're not just powerful, Frieza, you're something else, something that doesn't fit into the binary of good and evil, heaven and hell, redemption and damnation. You're a third option that creation never accounted for." "And what option is that?" Frieza asked, genuinely curious despite himself. "Honesty," Lucifer said simply. "You've never pretended to be anything but what you are, never justified your cruelty with righteousness, never claimed your conquests were for the greater good. You're evil and you own it completely. No shame, no excuses, no pretense." He laughed and it sounded like breaking glass. "You're more honest than heaven's angels who kill in God's name while claiming mercy. More honest than hell's demons who pretend their suffering is punishment when it's really just existence. You're the truth that nobody wants to acknowledge, that evil exists, has always existed, and will continue to exist regardless of cosmic justice." "Your point?" Frieza asked coldly. "My point," Lucifer said, "is that my daughter is up there right now, trying to stop a war by appealing to rules that don't actually exist, trying to find redemption in a system designed to make redemption impossible, and she's going to die for it unless someone intervenes." He looked between Frieza and Alastor. "So here's my offer, both of you. Help me save Charlie, help me end this war before heaven sends reinforcements we can't fight, and in exchange..." He snapped his fingers and Alastor's contract burst into flames, disintegrating into ash. "I'll give you what you want, Alastor, you're free, truly free, no conditions, no hidden clauses, and Frieza." His smile became something ancient and knowing. "I'll tell you how to leave hell, how to return to the living world, how to be resurrected without technology or Dragon Balls or any of the mechanics of your home universe." Frieza's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. "You can do that." "I'm the devil," Lucifer replied. "I can do anything. I just choose not to because it's exhausting and everyone wants something and nothing ever really changes." He turned toward the vault's exit. "But my daughter thinks things can change. She believes it with every fiber of her being. And maybe, just maybe, she's right. Maybe an honest tyrant and a freed demon and a fallen angel can accomplish what millennia of cosmic law couldn't." And what's that? Alastor asked, his voice still shocked from the broken contract. Ending the war between heaven and hell, Lucifer said, not through victory, not through defeat, but by proving that the entire conflict is a lie we've been telling ourselves since creation. He walked toward the door, then paused. So, are you coming, or are you going to stay here arguing about who betrayed who while my daughter dies trying to save a world that doesn't deserve her? Frieza and Alastor looked at each other. Enemies, allies, two beings who had used each other and been used in turn, now offered a chance at something neither had expected. Genuine choice. After you, Lord Frieza, Alastor said, his smile returning, but honest now, without the usual performance. After you, Radio Demon, Frieza replied. And together, following the devil himself, they returned to the war. It was about to become very interesting indeed. When Lucifer emerged from the vault with Frieza and Alastor at his flanks, hell itself seemed to recognize its king's presence. The ground trembled. The perpetual red sky deepened to crimson so dark it approached black. Every demon in Pentagram City felt it, a weight settling over reality, ancient and terrible and absolute. The devil had left his castle. For the first time in centuries, Lucifer Morningstar walked among his subjects. They materialized on the battlefield's edge, where Charlie still stood surrounded by her protective circle, where angels and demons fought in brutal stalemate, where bodies, both golden and shadowdark, littered streets that had seen 10,000 years of violence but never war like this. Adam saw him first. The first man froze mid-swing, his guitar weapon stopping inches from a demon's skull. His LED smile flickered, displaying something that might have been fear if angels could feel such things. Lucifer, Adam breathed, and his voice carried across the battlefield through divine amplification. You actually came out. After all this time, you actually. Shut up, Adam, Lucifer said pleasantly, and the first man's voice cut off as though severed by a blade. I'm here for my daughter. Everything else is negotiable. He walked forward and reality bent around him. Angels scrambled backward. Demons fell to their knees, not in worship, but because their bodies simply couldn't remain standing in the presence of such concentrated power. Charlie turned, tears still streaming down her face, and saw her father for the first time in years. Dad, her voice was small, broken, hopeful. Dad, I didn't think you'd. I know, Charlie, Lucifer said, and there was infinite sadness in his voice. I know what you thought, I know what I am. But you're my daughter and you're trying to save everyone, and I can't let you die for that, not even if dying might actually work. He stopped in front of her, small and diminutive next to her demonic form, and smiled. Besides, you were right about everything. The war, the extermination, the whole cosmic farce. It's all built on lies I helped create 10,000 years ago when I fell. He turned to face Adam and the assembled angelic army. So let's stop lying. Above them, Frieza hovered in silence, watching this family reunion with an expression of calculated interest. Beside him, Alastor materialized from shadows, his smile wider than ever now that his contract was broken, now that he was truly free for the first time in decades. This is going to be spectacular, the radio demon murmured, one way or another. Adam recovered his voice, divine authority flooding back into his words. Lucifer, this is heaven's business. The extermination is sanctioned by the highest. By who exactly? Lucifer interrupted, his pleasant tone never wavering. By God, because last I checked, the Almighty hasn't said a word to anyone since creation wrapped up. By the seraphim, by the angels who decided that annual genocide was an acceptable population control method. He spread his arms, encompassing the battlefield, the city, all of hell. This is my kingdom, Adam, mine. I didn't ask for it, I didn't want it, but it's mine, and you don't get to slaughter my subjects without consequence anymore. Your subjects are sinners, Adam shot back. Murderers, rapists, tyrants, demons who earn their damnation through evil acts. They deserve what they get. Like him, Lucifer gestured toward Frieza, who raised an eyebrow at being included in the conversation. The tyrant who killed billions across dozens of worlds, who committed genocide as casually as breathing, who represents evil so pure that even death couldn't contain him. Adam's LED smile twisted into a snarl. Exactly like him, he shouldn't exist. He's an aberration, a mistake in the cosmic order. No, Lucifer said quietly, he's a mirror. He shows you what you really are, Adam, what heaven really is. You kill in God's name and call it mercy. He kills for power and calls it conquest. The only difference is honesty. The battlefield had gone silent. Every angel, every demon was watching this confrontation with held breath and racing hearts. Frieza, Lucifer called out, not looking away from Adam. Would you like to tell everyone why you're really here? Why cosmic law sent you to hell instead of erasing you completely? Frieza descended slowly, landing beside the devil with his arms crossed. I'm here because I died unrepentant, because I felt no guilt for my actions, because the universe couldn't process what to do with someone who was evil without excuse or justification. And do you want redemption? Lucifer asked. Do you want to change, to grow, to become better? No, Frieza said simply. I am what I am. I see no reason to pretend otherwise. There, Adam shouted triumphantly. He admits it. He's irredeemable. That's why we need the extermination, to purge hell of beings like him who will never change. But that's the thing, Adam, Lucifer replied, and now his voice carried an edge, a sharpness that made even the first man flinch. Redemption isn't about deserving it. It's not a reward for good behavior. If it was, it wouldn't be redemption. It would just be transaction. He turned to Charlie, who was listening with desperate attention. My daughter understands that. She's trying to prove that anyone can be saved, not because they deserve it, but because mercy isn't something you earn. It's something you receive despite not earning it. That's insane, Adam protested. That's grace, Lucifer corrected. Real, genuine, impossible grace. The kind that heaven preaches but never actually practices. He took a step toward Adam, and the first man, blessed with divine power, commander of heaven's armies, the literal first human ever created, stepped back. So here's what's going to happen, Lucifer said, his voice dropping to something soft and terrible. You're going to take your army and return to heaven. You're going to tell the seraphim that the extermination is over, forever, and in exchange, I won't do what I should have done 10,000 years ago when they cast me down here. And what's that? Adam asked, trying to sound brave and failing. Rebel, Lucifer said simply. Again, properly this time, with all of hell behind me, with demons who are tired of dying annually for crimes they've already been punished for, with sinners who are ready to burn heaven itself if it means ending the cycle. He smiled, and it was the saddest thing Frieza had ever seen. I fell because I loved humanity too much, because I wanted them to have choice, to be free, to be more than obedient puppets. And heaven punished me by making me king of the place where humanity's failures go to suffer eternally. But what if hell isn't a punishment? He gestured around at the city, the demons, his daughter. What if it's a second chance? What if redemption was always possible, and the only thing stopping it was heaven's insistence that some sins are unforgivable? The silence that followed was absolute. Then Adam laughed, really laughed, with genuine cruel amusement. You really believe that, after 10,000 years, you think you can just overturn cosmic law with a speech? You think heaven will just accept this? I don't know, Lucifer admitted. I don't know if heaven will listen. I don't know if God cares. I don't even know if this will work. He reached out and took Charlie's hand. But my daughter believes it's worth trying. And if there's one thing I learned from my fall, it's that sometimes the most important things are the ones worth trying even when success is impossible. For a moment, one crystalline, perfect moment, it seemed like it might actually work. Like words and philosophy and the desperate hope of a redeemed devil might end the war. Then Frieza laughed. It was a sound like breaking ice, sharp and clear and utterly without mercy. Every eye turned to him as he stepped forward, his tail swaying behind him, his red eyes gleaming with something beyond amusement. How touching, he said, his voice carrying that aristocratic refinement that made every word sound like an insult. The devil's redemption, the princess's impossible dream, the cosmic order overthrown by the power of belief. He looked at Lucifer directly. But you're wrong about one thing, Morningstar. You said I was a mirror, that I showed heaven what it really was, but that's not quite accurate. His aura began to build, golden energy crackling around him like a newborn star. I'm not a mirror, I'm a test. I'm what happens when cosmic law encounters something it can't categorize, can't redeem, can't destroy. I'm the question creation doesn't want to ask. The energy intensified and Frieza's form began to change. Muscles rippled, his body grew. The white and purple shifted, melded, transformed. What happens when evil doesn't want redemption? What happens when power exists for its own sake? What happens when someone looks at your grace, your mercy, your second chances, and rejects them all? Golden light exploded across the battlefield as Frieza transformed, his power ascending to heights hell had never contained before. His golden form manifested fully, adapted to hell's laws, expressing power that made the realm itself scream in protest. "I am Frieza," he declared, his voice echoing with cosmic resonance. "I am the tyrant eternal. I am the conqueror unbound. I am what happens when evil is honest about what it is." He raised one hand toward the sky, and energy gathered there, massive and terrible and beautiful. "And I reject your redemption. I reject your mercy. I reject the very concept that I need saving." The attack built, growing larger, more powerful, until it eclipsed the battlefield itself. A sphere of golden destruction that could crack hell's foundations, that could shatter the barriers between realms, that could destroy everything and everyone present. "Frieza, no!" Charlie screamed. But Frieza wasn't listening. For the first time since arriving in hell, he felt truly alive. This was what he was, this was his purpose, not redemption, not growth, not change. Pure, absolute, honest destruction. "Death ball," he whispered and released the attack. It fell toward the city like a second sun, beautiful and terrible and inevitable. And Lucifer Morningstar, the devil himself, raised one hand and caught it. For a moment, time stopped. Frieza's death ball, an attack that could shatter planets, that contained enough power to crack reality itself, pressed against Lucifer's palm like a child pushing against an adult. The golden energy crackled and roared, seeking release, seeking destruction. And Lucifer held it effortlessly. "No," the devil said quietly, "I don't think so." He closed his fist, and the death ball compressed, shrinking, diminishing, until it was nothing more than a spark that faded into non-existence. Frieza stared, his golden form trembling with rage, and for the first time since arriving in hell, genuine shock. Impossible. That attack contained enough power to destroy hell, Lucifer finished, his voice still gentle but carrying an edge now. To crack the foundations of damnation itself. I know, I felt it, very impressive. He took a step forward, and suddenly he wasn't small anymore, wasn't diminutive. The ringmaster outfit remained, but his presence expanded, filled space, became something vast and terrible and beautiful. "But you're in my realm, Frieza, my kingdom, built by my fall, sus. Tainted by my power, defined by my rebellion against heaven itself. Did you really think you could destroy it without my permission?" Around them, reality rippled, the battlefield shifted. Angels and demons found themselves frozen, unable to move, watching helplessly as the devil and the tyrant faced each other. "You wanted to know what happens when evil rejects redemption," Lucifer continued. "You wanted to prove that you're beyond salvation, beyond grace, beyond any cosmic law, but here's what you don't understand." His hand shot out, faster than Frieza could perceive, and gripped the tyrant's throat. "I am the blueprint for that. I'm the original rebel, the first to reject divine authority, the angel who looked at God's plan and said, 'No, everything you are, everything you think makes you special, I did first and better 10,000 years before your universe even existed.'" He lifted Frieza off the ground with one hand, and the tyrant, who had fought gods and defeated divine warriors, couldn't break free. "The difference," Lucifer said softly, "is that I rejected heaven because I loved something more, because I believed humanity deserved freedom even if it meant damnation for me. You reject redemption because you love nothing, not even yourself." He released Frieza, letting him drop to the ground. The golden form flickered, unstable, as the tyrant processed what had just happened. "You're powerful," Lucifer acknowledged, "incredibly powerful. In your universe you were probably unstoppable, but this isn't your universe, this is mine, and here power without purpose is just noise." Frieza rose slowly, his pride wounded more than his body. "Then kill me, erase me, prove that your power exceeds mine." "Why would I do that?" Lucifer asked, genuinely confused. "That's what heaven would do, that's what Adam wants, that's the entire logic of the extermination, that some beings are too evil to exist and must be destroyed." He sat down cross-legged on the broken ground, looking up at Frieza with eyes that held infinite sadness. But I don't believe that, I can't believe that, because if some beings are truly irredeemable, then what was the point of my fall? What was the point of creating hell as a place of punishment instead of simply erasing sinners? You're asking me, Frieza said incredulously. I'm asking anyone who will listen, Lucifer replied. I've been asking for 10,000 years. God won't answer, heaven won't engage, and hell just suffers and fights and dies and suffers again. He looked at Charlie, still frozen in time with her hand reaching toward him. Until she decided that maybe, just maybe, hell could be something more than eternal punishment. That redemption wasn't a reward for good behavior, but a possibility for anyone who chose it. And I choose not to, Frieza stated flatly. I know, Lucifer said, I respect that actually, your honesty, your clarity about what you are, but here's my question, why are you here, really? Frieza blinked. I died, the universe sent me to hell. Yes, but why this hell? Lucifer leaned forward, his expression intent. There are infinite afterlives, infinite judgments, infinite ways the cosmic machinery could have processed you, but it sent you here, to my hell, to the one realm in all creation where redemption is supposedly possible. He stood up, walking in a circle around Frieza. What if that wasn't an accident? What if cosmic law sent you here because you're exactly what hell needs, not to be redeemed yourself, but to prove something? And what would that be? Frieza asked, his voice cold but his curiosity genuine. That evil isn't the opposite of good, Lucifer said. It's the absence of growth, the refusal to change, and that the only thing more dangerous than evil itself is evil that's honest about what it is. He stopped in front of Frieza, meeting those red eyes directly. You're not here to be saved, Frieza. You're here to save others by being exactly what you are. By showing demons and sinners and even angels that honesty, real, brutal, complete honesty, is the foundation of everything else. You're insane, Frieza said flatly. Probably, Lucifer agreed cheerfully. I've been alone in a castle for centuries making rubber ducks and talking to myself. Insanity is kind of expected at this point. He grew serious again. But consider this, I can send you back, right now, to your universe, to the living world, resurrected, restored, everything you were and more. Frieza went very still. Why would you do that? Because I want you to choose, Lucifer said simply. Not redemption, not change, not growth, just choice. Do you want to go back to your universe and continue being what you've always been? Or do you want to stay here in hell and help my daughter prove that redemption is possible even for those who don't want it? That makes no sense, Frieza protested. It makes perfect sense, Lucifer countered. Charlie needs someone who will never be redeemed, someone who proves that redemption isn't about the destination, it's about the offer, the possibility, the choice. He smiled sadly. I can't do that, I'm the devil. I'm supposed to be the ultimate evil, but I'm actually just a sad fallen angel who loved too much and lost everything. The demons can't do it, they're all desperate for redemption whether they admit it or not, even Alastor now that he's free. But you, Lucifer looked at Frieza with something approaching respect. You're genuinely, completely, honestly evil, and you don't apologize for it, you don't justify it, you just are what you are. So stay, he said quietly. Help Charlie run her hotel, be the one guest who will never check out, who will never be redeemed, who proves that redemption doesn't require success, it only requires the offer. Frieza was silent for a long time, processing this impossible proposition. And if I refuse, if I take your offer to return to my universe? Then you go back, Lucifer said simply. No tricks, no conditions, you leave hell and we never see each other again. You get to be the tyrant eternal in a universe where that actually matters. But, Frieza prompted because there was always a but. But you'll know, Lucifer said softly, you'll know that you had a choice, that someone offered you something beyond power and destruction, and you'll spend eternity wondering if you made the right decision. He snapped his fingers and time resumed. The battlefield came alive again, angels and demons moving, fighting, dying. Charlie stumbled forward, completing her interrupted step, looking between her father and Frieza with confused hope. So, Lucifer said, his voice carrying across the chaos. What'll it be, Frieza? Resurrection, or redemption you'll never accept but will spend eternity being offered? Frieza stood in the center of the war, feeling the weight of the choice pressing down on him like gravity he'd trained beneath. He could go back, could reclaim his empire, could find Goku and the Saiyans and finally prove his superiority. Or he could stay in hell and be the most unique thing in creation, evil that chose to exist alongside good without becoming it. The tyrant looked at Charlie, hopeful, desperate, foolish Charlie who believed everyone deserved saving. He looked at Alastor, freed but uncertain, powerful but purposeless. He looked at the demons fighting angels, dying permanently, choosing to resist even when resistance was futile. And he looked at Lucifer, the devil himself, who had rejected heaven and spent 10,000 years regretting it. Frieza smiled. It was a cold smile, a cruel smile, but underneath it, barely perceptible, was something else. Curiosity. Very well, he said finally. I'll stay, not for redemption, not for change, but because this, he gestured at the war, the hotel, the impossibility of it all, this is more interesting than anything my universe has to offer. Charlie's face lit up with joy. Alastor laughed his radiostatic laugh. And Lucifer smiled sadly, knowing that he'd just saved his daughter by recruiting the one being in creation who would never, ever validate her life's work. Excellent, the devil said. Now, shall we end this war before heaven decides to send reinforcements? He turned to Adam and the angelic army, his voice carrying absolute authority. The extermination is over. The cosmic joke has run its course. Tell heaven that hell is closed to their judgment. And if we refuse, Adam challenged, though his voice was weaker now. Then I'll do what I should have done 10,000 years ago, Lucifer replied pleasantly. I'll storm heaven, I'll break open the gates, I'll ask God directly why suffering is eternal but mercy is conditional, and trust me, Adam, you don't want those questions answered. The first man looked at his army, at hell's assembled forces, at Frieza standing beside the devil with golden power still crackling around him. And he made the only choice available. Retreat, Adam commanded, fall back, report to the seraphim. Portals opened across the sky. Angels withdrew, carrying their wounded, leaving their dead. The war was over. Hell had won. But the real battle, the battle for souls and purpose and meaning, was just beginning. 3 days after the war, the Hazbin Hotel was rebuilt. Not physically, the structure had survived mostly intact, Charlie's protective wards holding against even the war's worst violence. But metaphorically, spiritually, the hotel had been transformed from a joke into something else, something significant. Demons came now, not many, but some. Sinners who had fought in the war and survived, who had seen angels blade and heaven retreat, who wondered if maybe, just maybe, the impossible princess was onto something. Frieza watched them arrive from his position on the hotel's roof, his golden form long since dismissed, his white and purple body unmarred by the battle. Below, Charlie greeted each arrival with that painful, earnest enthusiasm. Vaggie stood beside her, suspicious but supportive. Angel Dust lounged nearby, making inappropriate jokes. Husk drank at the bar. It was almost domestic. It was absolutely absurd. Penny for your thoughts, Alastor's voice crackled as he materialized beside Frieza. The radio demon had been different since his contract was broken, less performative, more genuine, though his smile remained constant. I'm wondering why I'm still here, Frieza said honestly. Lucifer offered me resurrection, escape, everything I claimed to want. And yet you stayed, Alastor observed. Why? Frieza was quiet for a long moment. In my universe, I was the strongest, untouchable. Every battle was foregone conclusion, every victory hollow. The Saiyans provided challenge, yes, but even that became repetitive. Defeat, return, lose again. The pattern was tedious. He looked down at the hotel, at Charlie laughing with a new resident. But this is genuinely unpredictable. The princess who believes everyone can be saved. The devil who wants to be wrong about eternal damnation. The demons who fight against their own nature. It's chaos. And you enjoy chaos? Alastor asked. I enjoy novelty, Frieza corrected. I enjoy questions without clear answers. And the question of whether someone like me, someone truly, fundamentally evil, can exist in a place dedicated to redemption without being changed by it, that's a question worth exploring. Even if it proves you wrong, even if you do change. Frieza's laugh was cold and sharp. I won't, I can't, I am what I am, radio demon, but watching the princess try, watching her offer salvation to the irredeemable, that's entertainment worth staying for. Below, a commotion drew their attention. A new arrival was arguing with Charlie, a demon of significant power judging by the distortion in the air around them. One of the overlords, perhaps, drawn by curiosity or strategy or genuine interest in redemption. Charlie was handling it with her usual mix of optimism and determination, but Frieza could see the exhaustion around her eyes. The war had cost her, not in blood but in faith. She'd seen her father emerge from isolation, had watched heaven retreat, had proven that change was possible. But she'd also seen how close it had all come to failure. She's breaking, Frieza observed clinically. The weight of success is destroying her faster than failure ever could. Astute, Alastor agreed. Success means she has to maintain it, has to prove it wasn't a fluke, has to actually redeem someone, or all of this, the war, the sacrifice, her father's intervention, becomes just another failed dream. And were her test cases, Frieza said, the radio demon and the tyrant, the two beings most unlikely to ever achieve redemption. Quite, Alastor's smile widened, no pressure. They watched in silence as Charlie continued her work, continued believing in the impossible with every fiber of her being. She reminds me of someone, Frieza said quietly, almost reluctantly. A Saiyan, Goku, he believed in redemption too, gave me chances I didn't deserve, showed mercy when vengeance would have been justified. And you killed him for it, Alastor guessed. Several times, Frieza confirmed, or tried to. He kept coming back, kept believing I could change, kept offering his hand even as I reached for his throat. Did you ever wonder if he was right? Frieza was quiet for a long time. Then, no, because change implies I'm broken, implies that what I am is somehow wrong and needs fixing. I reject that premise entirely. But you're here, Alastor pointed out, helping her, protecting her hotel by your mere presence, choosing to exist in her orbit of impossible hope. If that's not change, what is it? Curiosity, Frieza replied, entertainment, strategic positioning for when Hell's power structure inevitably shifts again. Of course, Alastor said, not believing him at all. The argument below had resolved. Charlie had convinced the overlord to at least try the hotel's program, to give redemption a chance. Another small victory in her impossible war against eternal damnation. She looked up then, sensing observation, and her eyes met Frieza's. She smiled, tired but genuine, and waved. Against every instinct, every pattern of behavior established across 70 years of existence, Frieza found himself nodding back. We're doomed, Alastor laughed. Utterly, completely doomed. She's going to wear us down with sheer persistent optimism until we accidentally become better people. Speak for yourself, Radio Demon, Frieza said coldly. I am unchanged, unredeemed, exactly what I've always been. Keep telling yourself that, old boy, Alastor replied, still smiling. Keep telling yourself that. That night, Frieza stood alone in the room Charlie had assigned him, luxurious by Hell's standards, though spare compared to the palaces he'd commanded in life. He could leave, could walk out of the hot. Reclaim the empire he'd been building before the war, rule Hell through force and fear, and the careful accumulation of soul contracts. Lucifer's offer still stood: resurrection, return, escape. But he didn't move. Because the truth he would never admit aloud, barely admitted to himself, was that Alastor was right. He was challenging. Not redemption, not salvation, not becoming good or kind or anything resembling heroic. But changing nonetheless, learning that power could be expressed through restraint, that strength could manifest as choice rather than conquest, that existing alongside hope didn't diminish him, it tested him in ways combat never could. In his universe, he had been a god among mortals, unchallenged and therefore stagnant. Here in Hell, surrounded by demons and sinners and a princess who refused to stop believing in him, he was being forced to confront a question he'd never asked before. What comes after conquest? What purpose remains when you've destroyed everything worth destroying? He didn't have an answer. But for the first time in his long, terrible existence, he wanted to find one. And that, more than anything, terrified him. Because tyrants who ask questions stop being tyrants. And Frieza had spent his entire existence knowing exactly what he was. What would he become if that certainty eroded? He didn't know, but he was going to find out. Whether he wanted to or not, 6 months passed in hell, and the impossible became routine. The Hazbin Hotel grew, not exponentially. Charlie's redemption program was still viewed with suspicion by most of hell's denizens, but steadily. A dozen residents now called it home, sinners genuinely trying to change, to grow, to become something more than their damnation. None had been redeemed yet, none had ascended to heaven. But they were trying. And in hell, that was revolutionary. Frieza remained, existing in a strange limbo between guest and guardian. He took no part in Charlie's exercises, refused her therapy sessions, rejected every attempt at reformation. But he stayed, and his presence alone, the tyrant who could destroy the hotel with a thought but chose not to, became a strange kind of protection. Overlords who might have tested Charlie's resolve saw Frieza on the roof and reconsidered. Angels who returned for reconnaissance saw the being who had wounded Adam and reported back with concern. Even the other sins, the embodiments of hell's fundamental forces, watched the hotel with wary interest. Something was shifting in hell, something unprecedented. And everyone wanted to know what it meant. Alastor had become Charlie's unofficial advisor, his freed status allowing him to operate without the hidden agendas that had defined him before. He still schemed, that was his nature, but his schemes now aligned with the hotel's success rather than conflicting with it. It was almost like having friends. Neither Frieza nor Alastor knew quite what to do with that. On a day like any other, if hell had days, if time meant anything in a realm of eternal dusk, Lucifer appeared at the hotel unannounced. The king of hell stood in the lobby, looking small and sad and infinitely powerful, and cleared his throat. "Family meeting," he announced, "everyone to the main room, now." Charlie rushed down the stairs, excitement and concern warring on her face. "Dad, is everything okay? Is heaven?" "Heaven's fine, hell's fine, everything's fine," Lucifer assured her, "but we need to talk, all of us, about what happens next." They gathered in the hotel's main room, Charlie and Vaggie, Angel Dust and Husk, the dozen residents in various stages of rehabilitation, Alastor materializing from shadows, and Frieza descending from his usual rooftop perch. Lucifer stood before them, hands clasped, looking more uncertain than a being of his power should ever look. "I've been thinking," he began, "about redemption, about what it means, about whether it's even possible." Charlie's face fell. "Dad, if you're here to tell me to give up." "I'm here to tell you that you were right," Lucifer interrupted gently. "About everything, about me hiding, about heaven being wrong, about hell needing to change." He took a breath unnecessary for a being beyond life but done anyway out of habit. "I've received communication from heaven, from the seraphim themselves. They want to negotiate, to discuss the possibility of redemption pathways, of sinners earning their way to heaven, of the extermination ending permanently." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Charlie's hands flew to her mouth. "But there's a condition," Lucifer continued, and his voice grew heavy. "They want proof. They want to see that redemption is actually possible, that a sinner can genuinely change, genuinely repent, genuinely become worthy of heaven." His eyes found Frieza. "They want you." The room fell silent. "Me," Frieza said flatly. "You're the test case," Lucifer explained. "The being who shouldn't exist, who represents evil so pure that even death couldn't process it. If you can be redeemed, heaven will accept that anyone can. They'll open pathways for sinners to ascend, will dismantle the extermination permanently, will acknowledge that hell can be more than eternal punishment." He smiled sadly. "You're the key to everything, Frieza, to all of Charlie's dreams, to reforming the relationship between heaven and hell, to proving that redemption isn't just a fairy tale." "There's just one problem," Frieza said, his voice colder than the void between stars. "What's that?" Lucifer asked, though he already knew. "I don't want redemption," Frieza stated clearly. "I have never wanted redemption. I will never want redemption. I am evil, unrepentant, and perfectly content with what I am." Charlie stepped forward, tears already forming. "But Frieza, this is everything. This is the whole point. If you would just try, if you would just open yourself to the possibility. No, the word hung in the air like a blade. Charlie, I have told you from the beginning what I am. I have never lied to you, never pretended to be anything but a tyrant who conquers for the sake of conquest, who destroys because destruction pleases him, who sees mercy as weakness and redemption as delusion. He looked at her directly, and there was something in his eyes, not kindness, never that, but perhaps respect. I stayed because you offered something interesting, because existing alongside your impossible hope was more novel than returning to my universe, but I will not pretend to change for the sake of your cosmic politics. Even if it means hell stays broken, Charlie asked, her voice breaking, even if it means sinners continue to suffer eternally, even if it means everything we fought for was pointless. Especially then, Frieza replied, because redemption gained through coercion isn't redemption at all, it's just another transaction, another deal, another soul contract dressed in prettier language. Lucifer watched this exchange with ancient eyes, seeing something the others missed. He's right, Charlie. What? Charlie spun to face her father. How can you say that? We have a chance to change everything. We have a chance to prove we've learned nothing, Lucifer corrected gently. Heaven wants Frieza to redeem himself to validate their system, to prove that their judgment is correct, that sin and salvation work the way they've always claimed. He walked to stand beside Frieza, the devil and the tyrant united in unexpected alliance. But what if they're wrong? What if redemption isn't about becoming what heaven wants? What if it's about choosing your own path, even if that path leads nowhere heaven recognizes? You're defending him, Vaggie demanded. After everything, after we finally have a chance to make this work. I'm defending choice, Lucifer replied. Real choice, not the illusion of choice where you pick between redemption and damnation, but actual, genuine, terrifying choice where you can say, I choose neither, and have that be valid. He turned to address the room. Frieza has done something no one in Hell's history has done. He's existed alongside redemption, been offered salvation repeatedly, had every opportunity to change and refused, not out of ignorance, not out of fear, but out of genuine, honest self-knowledge. He knows what he is, he accepts what he is, and he chooses to remain what he is even when change is possible. Lucifer's voice grew passionate. That's not damnation. That's the most honest relationship with identity anyone in this room has. He's the only one here who isn't lying to himself. Charlie was crying now, years of hope and effort seeming to crumble. So what do I tell heaven? That redemption is impossible, that I failed. You tell them redemption is optional, Frieza said, surprising everyone by speaking. You tell them that offering salvation is noble, but forcing it, demanding it, making it a requirement for basic dignity, that's just tyranny wearing a halo. He looked at Charlie with something that might have been the closest he could come to compassion. You didn't fail, princess. You proved exactly what you set out to prove, that anyone can be offered redemption. The fact that I refuse doesn't invalidate the offer. But heaven won't accept that, Charlie protested. Then heaven is still wrong, Frieza replied simply, and you'll have to decide whether you're trying to appease heaven or actually change hell. The silence that followed was profound. Then Alastor laughed, genuinely laughed, without radio static, with real amusement. Oh, this is delicious. The irredeemable tyrant just gave the redemption princess a lesson in authentic grace. The cosmic irony is exquisite. Despite everything, despite the tears and the crushing disappointment and the impossible choice, Charlie found herself almost smiling. You're all insane, she said wetly. Probably, Lucifer agreed. I did spend centuries alone making rubber ducks. Though, finitely, Alastor confirmed. I sold my soul for power and smiled constantly to hide my trauma. Absolutely, Frieza added. I conquered 700 planets and considered it a mild Tuesday. Charlie looked around the room at her impossible family, her absent father who'd finally returned, the radio demon who'd found freedom in chains breaking, the tyrant who'd chosen damnation over salvation, and a dozen sinners trying desperately to be better than they were. It wasn't what she'd dreamed of, it wasn't what heaven wanted, it wasn't a fairy tale ending where everyone was saved and evil was defeated. But it was real, honest, genuine. And maybe that was worth more. Okay, she said finally, wiping her tears. Okay, I'll tell heaven that redemption is offered, not demanded, that change is possible but not mandatory, that hell will continue trying to rehabilitate sinners but on our terms, not theirs. They won't like it, Lucifer warned. I don't care, Charlie replied, and there was steel in her voice now, her father's blood showing. If they want war over this, we'll fight, but I won't force anyone to be redeemed, not even for peace. Frieza nodded, the closest he would come to approval. And in that moment something cosmic shifted, not visibly, not dramatically, but the fundamental relationship between heaven and hell, between redemption and damnation, between cosmic law and individual choice, cracked just slightly. It would take centuries to fully break. But the first fracture had formed, years passed in hell, though time remained a suggestion more than a rule. The Hazbin Hotel thrived in its own strange way. Some sinners redeemed themselves, genuinely changed, genuinely grew, genuinely ascended to heaven. Not many, but enough to prove it was possible. Others chose different paths, chose to remain in hell, not out of inability to change, but out of genuine preference for damnation on their own terms. Heaven and hell reached an uneasy peace. The extermination ended, pathways for redemption opened, but the fundamental question, whether beings could choose their own fate, remained contested, debated, fought over in the councils of angels and the courts of demons. Charlie Morningstar became a figure of legend, the princess who had ended the eternal war, not through victory, but through insisting that both sides were asking the wrong questions. Lucifer remained in hell, ruling now instead of hiding, trying to be the king his kingdom needed even when he didn't know what that meant. Alastor rebuilt his power base, no longer bound by hidden contracts, becoming perhaps the most genuinely free being in hell. He stayed at the hotel because he chose to, not because he needed to, and that made all the difference. And Frieza. Frieza remained exactly what he had always been, a tyrant, a conqueror, a being of pure and honest evil who made no apologies and sought no redemption. He stayed at the Hazbin Hotel. He protected it in his way. He existed as living proof that salvation could be offered without being accepted, that change could be possible without being mandatory, that evil could acknowledge good without becoming it. He was the hotel's greatest failure and its most important success. And sometimes, in quiet moments, he would stand on the roof and remember his universe. Remember Goku, who had believed in him when belief was foolish. Remember the Saiyans who had defeated him through hope and determination, and the stubborn refusal to accept that evil was inevitable. He didn't miss them exactly, but he understood them now in ways he never had before. Understanding wasn't redemption, wasn't change, wasn't growth. But it was something. And in hell, where nothing was supposed to change, where damnation was eternal and suffering was guaranteed, something was enough. One evening, Charlie found him on the roof, staring at hell's crimson sky. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly, choosing to stay, refusing redemption, remaining what you are when you could be something more. Frieza considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "No," he said finally, "I am Frieza, I am the universe's tyrant, I am evil incarnate and proud of it. Redemption would diminish that, would imply that what I am is somehow wrong." He turned to look at her, "But I don't regret staying, don't regret existing alongside your impossible hope, don't regret proving that choice matters more than outcome." Charlie smiled, sad but genuine. "You're my greatest failure, you know, the one soul I'll never save." "And you're my greatest mystery," Frieza replied, "the being who offers salvation to the irredeemable and calls it grace." They stood together in companionable silence, princess and tyrant, redemption and damnation, existing side by side without resolution. And somewhere in heaven, angels watched and wondered if they'd been asking the wrong questions all along. Somewhere in other universes, other timelines, other possibilities, Frieza conquered and destroyed and ruled. But in this universe, in this timeline, in this impossible hell, he had chosen something different. Not redemption, not salvation, not change, but choice. And in the end, that was the only thing that mattered. The Hazbin Hotel stood tall in Pentagram City, a monument to impossible dreams and genuine grace. And on its roof, a tyrant who would never be redeemed kept watch. Not because he had to, but because he chose to. And that made all the difference. In a universe where fate made a single mistake, death was not an ending. It was a beginning, not of redemption, but of choice. And sometimes that's enough.